by a bent line, by a straight line, by a crooked line. The Crooked Path, a podcast for modern cunning folk with Peter Pagan. Hello and welcome to The Crooked Path. My name is Peter Pagan, and tonight we're going to have an interesting and open layout for the whole caboodle. But before I start waxing lyrical, or lorical, or any other kind of ickle, let's have a little bit of news. Not a lot of news this time. Basically, we are vending again on Saturday at Melrose Trading Post, and I'll be selling my wacky glassware. I do have my chalices and my incense burners up on eartisan.org, the Eclectic Artisan, which is a pagan only selling site. Lots of other good stuff there as well. You want to check out some of the stuff if you haven't been there before. It's really cool. And of course there's always my Etsy store, which is under Pendraig. In fact, they're both under Pendraig. And there you'll find all my geeky stuff as well as the pagan witchy stuff as well. And we are going to be moving into t-shirts soon, so keep an eye out for that. And that's really all there is in the news. There's not a lot going on at the moment. I think everyone's getting ready for their summer vacation and is being well behaved, which is really boring. So why don't we do something we haven't done for a long time and play some music? Let's listen to Dave the Bard and Cauldron Born.
Sunset, moonrise, and see how the land is bathed in silver hue. You feel so lonely. Come with me and let me show there are others just like you, who feel the powers of earth, sea and sky, of dragon and fairy and shades of the night. Hear the call of our ancestors of blood and bone, of womb and tomb and standing stone. Lady, stir your cauldron well, chant your words and sing your spell. Deep within this darkened hall, hear the goddess Caradwen call. See a man alone on a hill, his arms raised high to the moon, chanting words, a charm, a spell of power, a witch's rune. He calls to the powers of earth, sea and sky, of dragon and fairy and shades of the night. He calls to his ancestors of blood and bone, of womb and tomb and standing stone. Lady, stir your cauldron well, chant your words and sing your spell. Deep within this darkened hall, hear the goddess Caradwen call. Come and taste of the cauldron's brew and magic she will give to you. You will dance in the eye of the storm, your Caradwen's children, the cauldron born. A charm of silver bed and turn, if they're to be seen. She took his hands, tracing the lines, searching for patterns and looking for signs. Your life a construction, one day you will see. Through the illusion and into the dream. Lady, stir your cauldron well, chant your words and sing your spell. Deep within this darkened hall, hear the goddess Kerodwen call. Come and taste of the cauldron's brew and magic she will give to you. You will dance in the eye of the storm, your Kerodwen's children, the cauldron born. So we stand on this hill, our shadows are cast by the moon, chanting words, our charm, our spell of power, our witch's rune. We call to the powers of earth, sea and sky, of dragon and fairy and shades of the night. We call to our ancestors of blood and bone, of womb and tomb and standing stone. Lady, stir your cauldron well, chant your words and sing your spell. Deep within this darkened hall, hear the goddess Kerodwen call. Come and taste of the cauldron's brew and magic she will give to you. You will dance in the eye of the storm, your Kerodwen's children, the cauldron born. Oh lady, stir your cauldron well, chant your words and sing your spell. Deep within this darkened hall, hear the goddess Kerodwen call. Come and taste of the cauldron's brew and magic she will give to you. You will dance in the eye of the storm, your Kerodwen's children, the cauldron born. You're the cauldron born, cauldron born, we're the cauldron born, cauldron born, we're the cauldron born.
So tonight I thought I would ramble on incessantly about one little subject and beat it to death. And the little subject I decided to talk about is paganism. You may have heard of it. And there's no particular reason why I decided to change the format, other than sometimes it's nice to do things different. And I thought that, I can pretend to be a late night talk show host and get all deep voiced and serious and sound like I know what I'm talking about, but other than that, it's just basically I spend a lot of time being very focused on specific pieces of law, and I know a lot of people like that and it goes down well and I enjoy doing it, but looking at the big picture sometimes can be very useful as well, and to get a perspective, all those little pieces that you've been focused on, the details, sometimes you get so focused on the details that you don't really pay attention to the big picture and you miss stuff. You miss what's in between the details that you're focused on. So the point for tonight's podcast is just to cast my net out and see what fetid imaginings come trawling past in my diseased brain and share them with you, because I like doing things like that. And paganism is an interesting subject. I mean, for me personally, I mean, obviously most of this is going to be personal perspective, so by no means do you have to agree with everything I say, or even anything I say. It's just me expressing my opinions tonight. This is an op-ed piece, if ever there was one. And you are free to completely disagree with everything I say tonight. In fact, if you do disagree, please comment on the either on the YouTube page or on the Crooked Path Podbean page, because at least then I know people are listening, which is always a good thing to know that people are listening, because then I might actually try and behave more, and that would make a lot of people very happy. But paganism is interesting from my personal perspective. When I first started studying magic, the word paganism wasn't being used by anybody. I mean, I bought my first occult book at the grand old age of 12, when I bought Crowley's Magic and Theory and Practice, also known as Book 4. Just a nice gentle introduction to magic. And I also read a lot of Dennis Wheatley novels, which, if you're British, will be aware, hopefully, that he was a great writer of all kinds of novels, but he wrote some spectacular occult novels, and then got into writing a lot of books on occult subjects like witchcraft and the devil and stuff like that, from a sort of outside interest perspective. Rumour has it he was quite knowledgeable and knew Crowley and stuff like that, but I don't know how true any of that is. But my favourite occult movie is still The Devil Rides Out, which is a brilliant movie, Hammer horror. And so I had a lot of interesting books on witchcraft written by Dennis Wheatley, and Crowley's Magic and Theory and Practice. And that's when I started actually looking into magic. And then the first book I got that I actually did anything with was Techniques of High Magic by Francis Skinner, which is a very interesting book, and totally different direction from where I ended up, but it was a good place to start, I think. But even from between the ages of 12 and 18, I'm buying books like crazy, scaring the hell out of my mother, because she kept finding the books even though I hid them. And and she was horrified at the thought of me getting into what she called black magic, because Dad had been into it, and had also had an affair with the High Priestess of the Coven that he was working with, which I think is what gave Mum her downer on magic generally. And so when she saw I was getting into it, sort of following the family trade as it were, she didn't like that at all. And then
pagan place.
Yes, pagan place. And so at the age of 18, having just left high school, I joined my first coven with Nigel and Seldy in London, and started to study Alexandrian Wicca. And but nobody was using the P word. We talked about witchcraft and Wicca and the occult and esotericists and all kinds of things, but nobody ever said that we were pagans. And it wasn't until we joined the Pagan Federation that we started using the word pagan. That was in 1990. My then wife, my first wife, Jackie, and I, who by this point we were running a coven of our own, and we joined the Pagan Federation to try and do a bit of networking with other covens and other Wiccans, and still we didn't really think of ourselves as pagans, but we got our letter saying welcome to the Pagan Federation, and thought, well, okay, if we're members of the Pagan Federation, I guess that means we can call ourselves pagan. We really didn't give a lot of thought to it, but gradually the word pagan became the umbrella term for Wiccans and people following other magical paths, which is fine, but it sort of puts it into perspective when people get very militant about paganism, about how we are the old people, we are the new people, the way the chant goes, and this is the world's oldest religion, and this is usually something that comes out of the mouth of Wiccans. So the oldest religion started in the 1950s, but it kind of gets really, really muddled. And I think part of the problem that we have in the modern pagan community is that we're trying to shoehorn very different people into this under the same umbrella. I know that's a terribly mixed metaphor, but I'm fond of mixed metaphors. I like my metaphors mixed, shaken not stirred. But the really interesting thing, I think, is that nobody really gave a lot of thought to what the word pagan is, or at least that's the impression you get looking at the mishmash of what's happened. I mean, the original use of the term pagan was for rustic rural people, and it was a derogatory term that the city folk in Rome used for the rural people. Oh yeah, he's a pagan. He lives on a farm. Well, they didn't speak with a Northern English accent, obviously, but if ever there is an accent that's great for being derogatory, it's Yorkshire. Ah, you bloody Wessex. See, it just rolls off the tongue. And anyway, so this derogatory term, pagan, literally meant country dwellers. And likewise the word heathen meant people who lived on the heath. So it was people who lived outside of the big cities. And wasn't complimentary at all. And later on, when Christianity reared its interesting head, I'll say, I can be PC-ish. When Christianity became the major force in Europe, the term pagan got transferred to mean anyone who wasn't Christian. The pagan religions. And it was still derogatory. And it's really, I think, when paganism started to be used by modern day magical practitioners, it was taken in a more academic sense. Partly that non-Christian ethnic religion aspect, but also in the sense of the pre-Christian, and which is fine. It's moderately accurate, although 90% of pagan religions are recreations rather than continuations, and nobody really uses the term neo-pagan, although it's a more accurate term, I think, for a lot of modern day pagans, the new pagans, and what's his name? Crap, his name's completely blown out of my head. But the guy who was Anton LaVey's altar boy, got the degree in magic from Berkeley. Brain fart. Wrote books on magic. God, I can't believe I'm totally spacing on his name. But anyway, he coined the term mesopagan and neo-pagan to mean mesopagan are people who are following old religions because they never got converted to Christianity. So the indigenous tribes of the Amazon, for example, would be mesopagan, and the Yazidi faith, although it's nominally Muslim these days, is a mesopagan religion from the Middle East, and I can't believe I can't remember the guy's name.
Isaac Bonewitz.
Yes, Isaac Bonewitz. I knew it started with a B. Just having one of those days. Didn't eat enough Rice Krispies this morning or something. Anyway, so you have these actual existing pagan religions that are animist or pantheist or panentheist or just polytheistic all over the world, tribal religions. And then you have the neo-pagan religions, which is what we have in Britain and America predominantly, but spread all over the world as well through the wonders of the internet. Witchcraft, many forms of witchcraft, many forms of Germanic faith. There's the Hellenic Reconstructionists, there's Celtic Reconstructionists, there's generic eclectic pagans. These all fall under neo-pagan. and so there's this big mishmash of different people trying to do different things, and some of these people have links to tribal faiths because of their ethnicity and their parentage and what have you, and that gets all mixed into the mix as well. So you get this very muddled sort of bunch of people to start off with, and then you find that what is supposed to at first glance be one very muddled community actually turns out, when you explore it a little deeper, to be three separate muddled communities. At least this is my theory, which is mine and no one else's. Well, somebody else probably thinks so too, but I'm claiming it for tonight, if nothing else. And that is that you basically have three communities trying to share the same space. And the first community is the people who want to just be pagan. They don't really care about lineage or training or unscrewing the inscrutable or deeper mysterious studies and practicing magic. They just want to go to seasonal rites. They want to have their rites of passage. They want to have their social events. They basically want a replacement for church. They want the social aspect of church, and they want the marking the passage of time aspects of church, but they want it to be pagan. And there are some derogatory terms that people use for people like this, and it's totally unfair, because you don't see in the Christian community people sort of talking about wannabe Christians. In fact, the problem with Christianity is that, well, amongst many potential problems, is the people that want to be Christian but don't want to actually be Christian. What do they call it? They worship supply side Jesus.
Not just want to be, but claim they are.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a pagan and having your child go through a pagan naming ceremony, have your wedding performed by a pagan minister, and go to the 8 Sabbats and go to the annual pagan pride event and go to picnics and moots, pub moots and stuff like that. That's perfectly fine. I mean, that's everyday life for people. Not everybody has to dive headfirst into the depths of the mysteries. So that's one community. The second community is the people that love to facilitate public events for one reason or another. And once again, another completely valid path in the neo-pagan movement is to put on the seasonal rites for the people that want to be congregation. If you're going to have congregation attending rituals, there needs to be a clergy. You need to have people who are competent at putting on seasonal rites, putting on rites of passage, doing counselling and all the other things that ministers do in the church for the wider community. Wear pretty robes and be someone people can turn to in times of need. And that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of respect for people who do that. I've done it myself in the past, but I've moved on. Now I don't like doing that sort of thing, so I don't. But I still put on, I still facilitate public workshops and classes and stuff. So I kind of still dip my toe in that arena a little bit. And there is always going to be crossover between these. And then you've got the third community, which is the people who really do want to throw open the gates of hell and throw themselves in head first and see what happens next. The people who want to plumb the depths of the mysteries and explore them and transcend and transverse and all kinds of other interesting words. They want to immerse themselves deeply in the study of the occult. And I guess that's where most of my interest lies. I like the mysteries. I like immersing myself deeply into my gods and ancestors and the lore and the magic. And like I said, they're not mutually exclusive, but the people who like to throw themselves into the gates of hell and see what happens next tend to look down their noses at the public rites and look down their noses even more at the people who just want to attend, just want to be the congregation. And this is where we get the stupid derogatory terms like fluffy bunny and wanna blessed bees and Pagan, a personal favourite. I try not to use them, but they do slip out occasionally, because sometimes you get annoyed at people and you say bad things. I mean, ask Donald Sterling. Luckily, I'm not important enough for people to record my words most of the time, and when they do record my words, it's because they beg them to. Please, please record my words. I want to feel important. So that's okay. So when I slip up and say something derogatory about someone, usually it goes unnoticed. I mean, there's plenty enough people out there saying that I'm saying bad things about people without me actually having to do it. So it saves me a lot of time and energy that way, I think. When people are trying to portray you as an evil character, you don't have to try so hard to be evil. Because half the work's being done for you. And I think that one of the problems that this causes, it's not a bad thing, because you need specialists, you need generalists, and you need people to support the other activities, and that can work very well. The problem comes where people tend to have a mentality of what they're doing is the only right way. And this is partly because most people started out in one of the monotheistic religions in the West. Most people grew up at least nominally Christian, even if your parents were atheists and you didn't go to church growing up. You still lived in a society where people at the very least paid lip service to Christianity. And one of the things about monotheistic religions is that they kind of got it built in that theirs is the one true and only way. And so you kind of have a predisposition when you've grown up in that environment to think of whatever you're doing as being the one true and only way. And let's be honest, if we are true, if we're going to be completely honest with ourselves, each of us does think that our way is the best way, or we wouldn't be doing it. You know, I'm a third degree archdruid. I actually think that Shinto is the one true religion, but I'm a druid. You're never going to experience that unless somebody is on some very interesting medication. You're never going to hear that from anybody out in the community. Everybody thinks that their flavour is the best flavour ever, and everyone else is substandard. It's a fact of life. You don't follow something with passion unless you believe it is the best. The trick is to have a worldview that allows you to see that it can be the best for you, but not necessarily for everybody. And that is the key, and I think a lot of people forget that. A lot of the witch wars and a lot of the infighting that happens in the pagan community is because people forget that there are a million paths to the face of God. They're all heading towards the light, but it's a big map. You can meander this way and that. I mean, there's a good reason why the path I follow is called the crooked path, because it does this. You know, the straight and true path, not really the way it works for me. And so people need to remember that the path that is right for them is not necessarily the right path for their neighbour. And this is why that's why we need diversity, it's why we need tolerance. You don't have to like what other people do, but you do need to be respectful of their right to, first of all, find what's best for them, and secondly, make their own mistakes. If they ask you for help, that's one thing. You should not try and force them to take your advice or follow your lead just because you think that you're better than them. And a lot of people just sort of, they do the whole bull in the china shop thing, and they just go at it. And part of it is enthusiasm. I mean, some of the most radical and loud and annoying pagan fundamentalists are the ones who have just found paganism, whichever flavour it is, because they've suddenly found this great thing and they want to share it with the world, and it's perfectly understandable. But they've still got that one true faith mindset, and so they tend to shove it down people's throat, and you end up with situations like there was a place where my wife and I used to work, where there was a person who was Wiccan, and she shoved it down people's throats. Some of it was, you kind of, wasn't too bad. I mean, she always had a little altar on her desk, which wasn't so bad, because there were people in the same department who had Bible quotes pinned all over their cubicle, especially the lady in the cubicle next to this woman. And she would come to work with her wearing her cloak. But she went way too far with it. I mean, she was obviously. I think we eventually found out she had been Wiccan for about 3 years, so she was freshly minted, and it was the one true and only faith for her. And she used to do things like hiss at people, and accuse people of trying to put the evil eye on her and stuff like that. And she made herself obnoxious, and in the end she got fired. Not because she was a Wiccan, but because she was a dick. But of course she cried religious intolerance and all the rest of it. Those of us who were practicing pagans in the department, watching her do this, and someone come up to us and say, "Do you do what she does?" And we said, "No, not us. No, we're something completely different." And it's really sad. It's because you want to stand up for and support your fellow pagans, but sometimes people get so obnoxious because they get so caught up in the passion of this without thinking it through to get beyond the one true and only faith mentality, that sometimes you just have to step away and say, I'm sorry, whatever this is, it's not what I am. Which is an accurate statement, but it hurts me when I have to do that, because I want to support people who are pagan. Yeah. There aren't an awful lot of us. It's a growing number, but it's still quite small. And we are outnumbered by some very rabid people out there. And so you want to support your fellow pagans. But it's very difficult sometimes when they make themselves completely obnoxious. And I think we need to bear that in mind. We need to think, is the way we are presenting paganism detrimental to paganism? Mm-hmm. We need to think about that, because whoever you encounter in your life as a pagan, you are essentially an ambassador for paganism, because chances are they don't know many other pagans or any other pagans. You may be the first one they've met, and if you come across as an obnoxious dick, they're going to think, right, well, paganism is obviously a faith of the obnoxious dicks. Another problem, and this is purely my perception, of course, you may disagree with me completely, is that when you look at a lot of the pagan paths, they are designed to be orthopraxies, not orthodoxies. A doxy, orthodox religion, is they share common beliefs. The Christian Church has the Apostles' Creed, and the Ten Commandments. We believe in God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. We believe in the transubstantiation. All that stuff. It's all we believe. It's faith. Witchcraft in particular, and some of the other pagan paths, are orthopraxy. In other words, it's not what we believe that we hold in common, it's what we do. Now, that can sound a little strange, but most people who call themselves witches do ritual, do magic. They call on the gods, they do some sort of invocation or possession work. They may or may not call on the ancestors, but they definitely call on spirits. And they work magic. It's one of the defining things of witchcraft. None of that is a belief, except for maybe I believe in magic. It's all about what we do. The beliefs that we have that support those practices, we are expected to work out for ourselves. Now, in a given tradition or coven or group, people are liable to share beliefs as well, because you generally start off by taking the beliefs of the person who trained you for a spin. But the thing is, you can form your own opinions, you can change your mind. And it's the practice that makes you what you are, not the belief. It's one of the arguments for why witchcraft is not, by many people, myself included, is not considered a religion. It is considered a practice that is expressed through the practitioner's personal spirituality. So, for example, your classic Strager practice their witchcraft through the sort of duality of the goddess Diana on a Saturday night out on the heath, and Sunday morning the saints in the local Catholic church. And to be a Strager was to be a good Catholic, if a somewhat heretical one. And there's a lot of examples of that, of magical practitioners who follow the prevailing religion of where they live. The cunning folk of England, who are all Christian, predominantly Protestant. The powwow, the Braucherei hex doctors of Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Deutsch. It's a folk magic practice that is practiced through the prevailing religion, which is Christianity. So they use psalms, God, the angels, Jesus. Modern day Southern Conjure, very, very similar. They work with the Bible, the angels, the gods. Hoodoo, voodoo, and the African diaspora religions work with a mixture of stuff, but they're still the magical practice is expressed through the spirituality. In those cases, the religions is the combination of the practice and the belief. Witchcraft can express itself through any religion, or none. You can have atheist witches. I know plenty of atheist witches. It sounds like an oxymoron, but you don't have to believe in the gods. We have the ancestors as well. The thing is, it's all about the practice, and then you develop your beliefs to provide a rationale for why you do the practice. So I don't talk about believing in my gods. I don't have to believe in them. I've met them. I've talked to them. I'm aware that my evidence is subjective because I can't share it directly with anyone else. Well, it's possible to argue that the other people in my coven would say that I have frequently shared the presence of my gods with them, but it doesn't work that way. It's not about belief. It's not about faith. It's about gnosis, and it is about where the hell was I going? I've totally sidetracked myself now. Nope, it's completely gone. So this is probably a good time to play another song. Here's Wendy Rule with Creator Destroyer, I think.
We are born. creatures of a day.
Following on from the whole idea of the different pagan groups and people having this one true and only way concept, which gets in the way of the real work, there's also a lot of interesting variations in the leadership in the pagan community. I mean, even down at the sort of basic level, people having discussions. There's been some very interesting discussions lately in blogs and podcasts around the internet about pagan clergy, about whether, first of all, whether we need a pagan clergy, and if we do, what format it should take, because obviously a lot of the old pagan religions had priesthoods that tended the shrines and performed the rituals and worked the mysteries. They weren't clergy in the sense of your Anglican minister or your Catholic priest is clergy. They didn't tend to minister to a congregation. They were solely focused on the work of the temple as far as appeasing the god and performing the rituals. And then you have the more modern version of clergy, which is the minister, the parish priest, if you will, looking after his flock and providing counselling services and all the other stuff, along with the rites of passage and other rituals. And I think it's an important distinction to make, and I think that really falls back on the three sub-communities in paganism. I think there is a valid argument for there being a pagan clergy that ministers to the congregation, to the wider pagan community. But I think that you also have to bear in mind that we do need the kind of leaders who teach the mysteries, and their focus is on the mysteries rather than on community. Because, you know, as I said before, there are those two sides. So the people who are serious about their paganism, there's the community aspect, and there is the throwing yourself into the mysteries aspect. And to the point where I was actually recently invited to join a group on Facebook called Project Pagan Priest, that was looking for dialogue between men in the pagan community about being an effective priest in a community where, for a large amount of the time that neo-paganism has existed, the focus has been on the feminine, the goddess, and the wider pagan movement has been largely shaped by feminist activists, Dianics, you know, Starhawk and her followers. And you know, I'm not making a judgment call on that. It's just as a reaction to many centuries of patriarchal religion through Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. When neo-paganism came into existence, the gut reaction was to focus on the feminine, and I don't have any issues with that at all. However, along the way, a lot of male pagans have been disenfranchised. There's a lot of groups out there who focus on the goddess in an attempt to balance the patriarchal religions, but in the process of doing so, they have priestesses who at best tolerate males. I mean, there are the outright Dianic groups that don't allow males to participate. There are a lot of groups out there where to be a male pagan is kind of to be a second-class citizen, which is, you know, I can hear cries of, yeah, have a taste of your own medicine, because for many centuries, Western males have dominated females, and I understand that. But the thing is, if you're aiming for balance, then just swinging the pendulum all the way over the other way isn't really the way to do it. And so this group was formed to allow people to talk about these issues and discuss what it means to be a pagan priest. And aside from the fact that there were there were a couple of one true and only way type people in the discussion, and a lot of people who were sticking with the superficial, and so it wasn't really working for me to be there. And I actually sat down one day and thought to myself, why am I part of this group? I am not a priest. And I've never really sat down and really thought it through like that. When I was running the Alexandrian Coven back in England, I was a high priest. I was community leader, rites of passage, seasonal rites, performed all the priestly functions. In my traditional witchcraft coven now, I don't do that. I am a teacher, I am a facilitator of the mysteries. I don't do community work. I don't do public rites, seasonal rites. I don't do counselling. I mean, yeah, I'll give people advice, but it's not the focus. It's not part of my job description. And so I left the group, partly because I wasn't finding the discussions very interesting, because of people who were, basically railroading things into the direction they wanted to go rather than letting it go where it needed to go. But mostly I left because I realized that I'm not a priest. Do I really have a right to have a role in the conversation? So, and that's really been a problem for me in a lot of arenas when it comes to pagan discussions, discussion groups, forums online and what have you, is that you won't find me in many of them, mainly because I find that what I have to say isn't really important. And it's not because, it's not that I have to be the big important author. I could care less about that. It's just that I find that I join these groups to see all excited about learning something new, and what I find is the same old mindsets, the same old arguments, people poo-pooing and putting down other people, and it just gets tedious. And so I back away. And part of the problem, I think, is that because paganism has grown, despite the fact we're still a very small percentage of the population, we've grown pretty rapidly, and we've grown without any structure. And I'm not necessarily that much of a supporter of structure per se, but one of the issues of the rapid growth has been that there's a lot of people who got into paganism were not able to find somebody to teach them and cobbled something together for themselves. Now, this isn't necessarily of itself a bad thing, but what has happened in some circumstances is that people have, because they couldn't find a coven, they started one. But because they started a coven, they have to be the high priest, or the magister, or the big high mucky muck. But they have no training. They've got a couple of books they surreptitiously look at when no one else is looking, and they cobble things together. But because of the prevailing way that the community is or was, I mean, I'm talking about the experience I had going through the 80s and 90s and into the early noughts with the pagan community. There's a lot of people who basically decided to fake it until they make it, and some of them made it and became very valuable members of the community. But there was a lot of people who there was a period of time where you had to have a lineage, you had to have a history. It wasn't good enough that my name's John and I have a natural facility with putting together ritual. Instead, what you got was, I was initiated by my grandmother at the age of 7, and and let's be honest, it got started off. Gardner mythologized the beginnings of Gardnerian Wicca. Alexander's followed suit with Alexandrian Wicca. He mythologized the whole thing. I mean, if you ever read King of the Witches, which is supposed to be a biography of Alexander's, he does the whole initiated by my grandmother at the age of 7 thing. and it's really unfortunate. But back then, I think people felt they had to. You had to create a backstory. And part of it was insecurity, because you know that you picked up Uncle Bucky's Big Blue Book, the Complete Book of Wicca by Raymond Buckland, or one of the various other books that were floating around, and you were basing everything on that, or just making it up as you went along. And so you started getting these spurious lineages, and then there became trends. As paganism got more popular and the numbers grew, suddenly being Wiccan wasn't good enough. Then in the late 90s, family trads came to the front, and that was the big trend, and everyone had to be a family trad, which once again meant trotting out your initiation from your grandmother. And no, we don't have a book of shadows, we have a book of art that has been passed down in the family for generations. Unbroken lineage, don't you know? And it's all bull. It's people trying to justify their existence in order to convince people. Most often, the person they're trying to convince the most is themselves that they are worthy of doing it. Mm-hmm. And the really sad thing is that there are a lot of people who are very gifted, very good at taking information from disparate sources and bringing them together and synthesizing them into a coherent whole, who could have otherwise done so much good, but because of their own insecurities or stupidities or whatever it was, decided they had to manufacture this faux history of this ancient tradition that's been in their family for generations, and it's really sad. I have no doubt that there are genuine family traditions that go back through generations. And one of the key things about most of those is that they are fragmented. When the story of Gerald Gardner being initiated by the coven in the New Forest, where he received fragments of the mysteries and had to patch the holes with whatever he could find, that rings true to me. My own experience has been very much along those lines, that where witchcraft has survived from pre-Christian times, it has survived in bits and pieces through family traditions. When Christianity came to Europe, the practicing witches basically, like everyone else, converted or got put to the sword. And so if you were practicing Anglo-Saxon magic or Celtic druidic stuff, I mean, the druids converted to Christianity in droves, partly because they saw similarities in the mysteries, and partly through expediency. A lot of the bards became monks, so specifically so they could preserve the stories in the books that the monks were writing of the tales of the British Isles. And my theory, and once again it's just my theory, it's what I believe, and nobody else has to agree with me, is that a lot of lore got preserved by people who rolled it in a veneer of Christianity. They paid lip service to the church, but they carried on their practices within the family. But as generation after generation came by, the fact that it was a veneer was forgotten, and so it ended up by the sort of 16th, 17th century, a lot of people were committed Christians, families, who happened to have these quirky traditions that they did. Somewhere along the way in between those times, because that leads to fragmentation, you had a bunch of guys who got sent off in the Crusades to the Middle East, got exposed to the Sufi mystics and Islamic mysteries as well, and some of the Judaic stuff that never left the Middle East. They came back from the Crusades and brought stuff that they discovered that fitted in with their family traditions, and patched some of the holes, defragmented it a little bit with Middle Eastern Semitic stuff. This is where Tubal-Cain got introduced into British witchcraft, I think, and a few other bits and pieces. And then they carry on their way over the centuries. The Christianity becomes the actual religion rather than the place you hide your real religion. but the practices continue within Christianity. The local parish priest would consider it very heretical if he encountered it, so it was kept quiet, but it was just, you know, we're good Christians, but we have these things we do. And this is where you ended up with the cunning folk in Britain, the cunning man, the wise woman, who would, you could pay to give you charm, make you a charm to protect you against witchcraft, or for healing and stuff like that. And then with the occult revival in the 18th and 19th centuries, what happened was that this stuff started getting pulled back again. And I think the mark of a true family tradition is that there's going to be a lot of biblical stuff in there. I know people who vehemently believe totally the opposite, that a real family trad doesn't have any truck with the Bible. Well, the Bible is a great source of magic. Ask any conjure person, and they'll tell you that quite happily. And it's all a mix and a growth. Nothing stays the same, because if it does, it stagnates. And a mystery tradition grows and evolves. And in the 17th, 18th centuries, you had the grimoire tradition, which got incorporated by the more affluent families into their practices. You've got Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, the secret societies, the Victorian Golden Dawn and Theosophy, all got, to a greater or lesser extent, rolled into it as well. Spiritualism, and then in the 50s, we go back to finally looking at the roots of British paganism, the Celts and the Anglo-Saxons. That might have happened a lot sooner, but there was this thing in academia that Britain didn't really have any mystery traditions. Tolkien, when he wrote Lord of the Rings, looked to the Nordic regions and their myths and legends, because he didn't believe that there was anything of value in the mystery traditions of Britain. He could have written them from a Celtic perspective, but he didn't, because he believed, you know, everyone always believes stuff over there is way more special. You know, the grass is greener and the magic is stronger over there. And so, you know, if Tolkien had written the Lord of the Rings from a Celtic perspective, the witchcraft may have had a completely different flavour and been a lot more poetic. Rudyard Kipling wrote beautiful poetry that was very pagan, and was incorporated into Gardner's new creation of Wicca. But it's all about being true, and the thing is, by all means, create a synthesis from various sources. I mean, the tradition that my coven follows is a synthesis of various traditions. I've been through a lot of different traditions. My wife Linda has been through different traditions. A lot of the founders of our tradition have had training in disparate paths of magic. And we bring that all with us when we come together, and we create a synthesis. And some of what we're bringing is very ancient, and some of it is new. And we continue that work by tapping the bone, by connecting with the ancestors and trying to recover lost lore. And this, I think, is a very important part of modern witchcraft in particular, and the pagan mystery traditions in general, is to recover what has been lost. Not necessarily by digging up archaeological stuff and being all academic about it. I think academia has its place, it gives you a good starting point, but ultimately it has to come from the heart. And that means creating stuff anew. It's not good enough to rebuild the way our ancestors did it. We have to look at the way it might have evolved and become now for us, and we need to build our version, and that is very important. And so for me, paganism is a very personal journey. It's why I often talk about witchcraft being a solitary path, even when you're with a coven, because you have to walk your own path, you have to put your own footprints in the sand. It's your own personal journey. If you may have good fortune to walk alongside like-minded people, and that is good, but ultimately it's the footprints that you leave behind in the sand and the footprints that lie ahead for you that are the important ones. So let's finish off with another song. Let's listen to Green and Grey by Dave the Bard.
Round the 1st of May, a man in black came walking into a woodland glade, following the sounds of pipes on this beautiful spring day, high from the music that they made. But what beheld him within that place? A look of recognition fell across his face. Oh Lucifer, why do you appear to me? For I am a man of God, a priest. I'm no devil, I'm father to the man. I have been here since the earth began. Neither black nor white, priest, hear what I say. I'm green and grey. The priest said, Lucifer, Lucifer, you lie so well. I pray unto my God, now go back to the fires of hell. You fell from heaven, and you fell from grace. You want dominion over this place. The piper smiled, to the priest he said, I was lord of animals, the wild hunt I led, until your God came here and with his jealous hand, it was he who wanted dominion over this land. For I'm no devil, I'm father to the man. I have been here since the earth began. Neither black nor white, priest, hear what I say. I'm green and grey. The priest said all evil comes from your hands. The piper said if evil is, well, it lies in the hearts of man. But you lead us Oh, you tempt us to rape, to steal, to kill. The piper said, whatever happened to free will? Then the grove lay empty, the priest told no one. The blossom lay upon the thorn, and the piper's tune was done. And in the sunlit forest, the animals they bowed, as the piper laid his goddess down. For I'm no devil, I'm father to the land. I have been here since the earth began. Neither black nor white, priest, hear what I say. I'm green and grey. I'm green and grey. I'm green and grey. I'm green and grey.
By a bent line, by a straight line, by a crooked line. The Crooked Path, a podcast for modern cunning folk with Peter Pagan.